You guys been asking for a review on these? We're finally delivering. We've got 3 kayaks here from Hoodoo, and Hoodoo has recently moved their manufacturing over to the US. So these are now proudly made in the US of A, and they still fit a fairly good budget price point when it comes to pedal kayaks. So we have a 10-foot pedal kayak that's around $1,500.
This is the Voyager 100P, and we have the Impulse 120,
which is $1,800, again, pedal drive.
And then we have the Apex 130, which is a 13-foot skiff style.
Yep, so we're gonna be running a transom motor on that. That's what it's made for, but it has a pedal drive. So we've got the block in there right now, but it'll take this fin drive. So we'll test that out with both options there.
So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna look up the specs. We're gonna give you a rundown. We'll talk price point, how these were designed, what they were intended for, and then we'll get them on the water, and then we'll give you our full review recap after we've had some time to mess around and actually try them out and hopefully set a couple hooks, measure a couple fish. 13-foot length on this Apex 13. We have a 39-inch wide beam at its widest point. Hull weight is 125 pounds, but that is without the seat. It's 145 pounds with the seat. That makes it a little bit heavier than some of the other kayaks in the similar weight class. However, it does have a very high weight capacity. 660 pounds is the listed weight capacity, and you have the option of either going to the fin drive or like we have it rigged out here with the outboard, which we thought was just really cool to try out on this kayak. Now, when I go over here to the key features, you can go up to a 6-horse either horsepower or equivalent horsepower, or you can use the fin drive with the iDrive. It does have a 360 swivel seat. The stability is going to be there. It's intended to be there. It's a Microskiff style hull. You do have these accessory rails that they've added here, and there are gear tracks in between. Now, those aren't standard size, so this is their own version.
So you gotta use these things right here, which means you have to kind of modify your track mount stuff.
Yep.
Or you can take off the end cap, you have to loosen up the rail itself, and then you can slide your normal T-bolts on there too.
It does have the front hatch, which is a huge benefit in a kayak like this.
These are actually armrests that you can attach to the seat if you want to. We don't really want to, but they're there if you want them.
I ain't doing that. And that is this kayak. So it's meant to be steady. It's meant to have 2 different propulsion types. Some things to love. You got front hatch storage, which is great. Pointed prow means I should get a little bit of speed here. And then you do have the inside storage here, which I love having here right at the seat. You do look like you sit a little bit low, but you do get 360 swivel. And there is a lot of track, even though it's kind of the proprietary version of that track. And then I love the ability to put this motor on there. So we'll see how this guy drives and how fast we can get it going. It does have the octagon shaped here too, so very likely you can use H-rail, Hobie H-rail accessories on here. Or you could use the catch version, because they also have a catch adapter for this type of rail. So that would actually be kind of cool. Now we move over to the Impulse 120. So 120 would indicate 12 feet of length. This is 35 inches wide, so just 1 inch shy of the Apex we were just looking at. Fully rigged hull weight is 115 pounds, so significantly lighter. Capacity is also significantly lower, 450 pounds. And this is a fin drive, and it is fin drive only. Now you can attach a motor separately, but in terms of your options, it's really fin drive, and you need a specific custom mounting plate to do something like a motor on it. And then as far as like how this kayak was designed, it is supposed to be a flexible, relatively modular, really a good fishing platform with a fin drive. So a little bit on the lighter side. You're not going to fully rig this one out with like 2 screens and a whole bunch of other stuff. But I think if you look at having a motor, a battery on board, and all your tackle, you're going to be just fine. You still get the center hatch storage, which is very convenient. And you up front have a spot for either a small transducer on the track, and then you obviously have with the tabs, you do have a front hatch, which is pretty cool. And then the seat is very interesting. Not sure it's my favorite design, but it does function where you have the ability to be low here, and then just by picking it up, you can go high. I think my only fault here I'd give it is if you hit it, it can fall, so you got to be a little careful. But that is very convenient to be able to have a high-low seat position. And it does have a bunch of molded-in rod holders and a good, decent-sized tank well. You can fit a 13 by 16 black pack, maybe even a 16 by 16. You could squeeze one in if you were careful about how you manage your tubes on the side. And that is the Impulse 120. This is the Voyager 100P. P, popping my P, stands for pedal. It is 10 feet long, 34 inches wide. Hull weight, fully rigged. This is loaded out with just what comes with it, 95 pounds, very lightweight kayak. Also though, lightweight in terms of what you can fit in. It's 350 pound weight capacity, comes with their Impulse drive. Looks, this is the one I'm excited to see the most on. It's a dry hatch, however, there's a bag on the inside, so that's how you keep your stuff from floating around. You've got good width, I think, here, and I like the way that you have your steering on the left-hand side, and the way also they have their rudder set up. It's a little bit more out of the way, which I really appreciate. And then a huge open area here in the back. Loading stuff in this kayak's not gonna be a big deal. I think really maintaining stability and not overloading it is gonna be your primary concern. I'm 200 pounds, 350 pound capacity. Yes, that still leaves me a good amount of weight, but if you try to stash a battery in here, all of a sudden you're really creeping up to the very top of that weight limit by the time you had a different motor and battery. So I don't know, it'll be really interesting. And then you do get two decent sections of track here. Again, it's their kind of their version of this. And it's, if you pop this off, you have to take all the track off to pop this off and open it up to make it usable for standard accessories, but you could do that if it was worth it for you. And then no high-low seat position. You get this seat position and that's it.
I'll also say these side handles are pretty sweet. There's actually finger grooves in them. So one of the more comfortable side handles I've seen on a kayak.
Also the grippiest by far. It's like a rubber coated. It's very nice. So yeah, these are the three models we're going to be testing today. We got two pedal, we got one motor. We will pedal around. We will test stability. We will test fishability. We will test the seat, the comfort, and the functionality of every single one of these kayaks. And the only way we can do that is get in the water, rip around, and find out.
Got him. There we go. Oh, it's a good fish. That's a chubby one. Feels pretty good. Oh, that's a good one. Let's go.
There's one. Okay. Ha! I too can catch fish. Hey, what a chunk!
I lost my stability.
Oh, there you go. What up, bro? What the heck? What was that?
Dude, the seat just went down on one side. Seat went down on one side. I almost went over just then.
All right, so we just got off the water. We got time in all three. Each of us put a couple minutes in. We did some casting. We did our standard testing to check for things like stability, comfort, access, and ultimately now we're at a point where I can tell you how we felt about each one. We're gonna go pros and cons. I'm gonna do pros for the Voyager 100P. If you'll recall, 10-footer, relatively light, definitely compared to the other ones, and has the Propel style drive. Pros on this one, well, you can reach the whole kayak with ease. So reaching backwards is actually pretty easy. I think of the three, certainly this was the most nimble. It also was the most efficient. I got the most amount of speed with the least amount of work when it came to this one. Now it had the same exact speed as the Impulse, and I think pedaling, it was maybe a hair faster than the Apex. So I think this is probably the fastest one. If I'm being honest, I think effort-wise, it was a little harder than the Impulse to get the speed, but just rolling it was super easy. I also think this would be the best paddling kayak and do the best in the river when it comes to being nimble and taking a little bit of current. The seat is comfortable. It was not uncomfortable. It was comfortable to sit and fish out of. I didn't have a problem with it. There's really not a lot of room here, but the track that you do have, I think, is right where you would want it. So as far as having track in the right spots, it has track in the right spots. I think like the value it delivers for $1,500, this is probably one of the cheapest pedal kayaks that you can actually buy with the drive included. 1,500 bucks, you get serviceable, simple kayak. You don't really need to add very much to it, and it's gonna be pretty efficient both in a pond and also inside of the river. So those are the pros on the Hoodoo Impulse 100.
Here are the cons that we see on the Voyager 100P. The biggest one is gonna be to do with the hull. Now there's a bit of a slope in a few different spots on here, and what we notice is because we don't have all the scupper plugs in there, water did come in when I did the standing test. Mostly it's a 10-foot kayak. I was standing up here, so a lot of that water was just coming in as it naturally would. It should then flow out. The problem is when you have a sloped hull, it can find pockets and get stuck. So the biggest pocket issue was back here behind this. So water was getting kind of stuck back there, but the other big issue was right here. If you swing down a little bit, you can see how this slopes up and then back down from the scuppers, not allowing the scuppers to really do their job. We also noticed we had to move our crate to an awkward position a little bit further back.
Because it was like sliding forward at the low point.
Yep, so it was pushing into the seat on Paul, so we moved it to the back behind this. Should be fine, and we we could still reach it, no problem. But again, water came in and it fell to the slope corners. It got stuck. That was kind of the biggest thing. So a little bit of warping on the hull. Here's one thing. Now I'm gonna rule this out to component missing here. So if you look over here, we didn't have this piece. This is a blem and a used, basically, kayak. So it's been beat up a little bit. A few parts were missing. We're kind of using it here at the Catch headquarters to fab some parts, which is cool. But because of that, when you sit on this seat, this piece basically went up a little bit and all the weight was over on this side. And because of where I had to position this, I'll show you what happened. It was sitting so far down on this right corner and it put all of the weight today right there. Now, it also started to warp this side. However, that's rebounded a little bit. This one, not so much. So we might have done some major damage to this kayak. Again, I gotta call it out because it happened. If it happens, we're gonna tell you guys. That said, we feel that happened as sort of a catastrophic failure of events because we were missing the other piece here to keep this level. It's gonna be an issue, right? So something to keep in mind. What I would love to see, and this is how we kind of like to approach cons here on the channel, is as an opportunity for improvement of a model from a company. So like for us, I've had this sort of seat flip up situation on multiple kayaks, especially on the sort of more inexpensive budget brand kayaks and the old towns too. But it's always nice if there's some metal backer here, at least a backer plate, if not ideally a track. So if this track right here was also back here, it gives it a ton of rigidity for that to sit on. It's gonna stay in position a lot better. You can even do what they did with the Impulse, where they have the little cradles that these would then snap into. It's just a far better setup for the seat. So that was lacking here. That's an issue. I think the major damage, consider that a catastrophic failure of events if you don't have that piece right there to lock this down.
It was our fault.
It was mostly our fault, but there is some warping to the hull, so that's something to keep in mind, and that can happen. Overall impression on this kayak, I think it's totally decent for a 10-footer. I think it's a great recreational kayak. I think it can be an okay fishing kayak. You get some speed, instant reverse, decent comfort, add a cushion there for a fairly inexpensive amount considering you got a budget pedal drive. I already know that somebody in the comments is going, $1,500 is not budget, but when you look at a pedal drive kayak, this is budget for a pedal drive.
So one thing to call out is at that price point, $1,500, the drive alone on most kayaks is around $1,000. Now, inexpensive, super inexpensive ones, the absolute bottom barrel price like $500, $550 to $750. So even if you assume this is $500, that puts this whole kayak on its own without the Impulse drive at like around $1,000. That's where we're saying value. I think you're getting a lot for your money. Not that it's cheap and inexpensive, but that per dollar, you're getting a lot of value. Now let's look at the Apex. Let's talk cons, last, pros first. What do we like?
So Apex, overall, stability's pretty decent. Did actually take a chance to stand up, turn around on that. Paul was doing donuts at, I believe, 100% on the motor, right? So full speed turns. You could see that part of the reason that this looks taller than the Crescent Crestcraft is it allows them to really take those tight turns, which is nice because it gives you a much tighter turn radius, but also stability through that turn, so you never felt uncomfortable, right?
When you correct at 100%, so while turning it was good, but when you correct, it jolts you to the other side.
Yep.
And that's because mostly of where the motor is. See how it's like not back here? When it's right here, you're very nimble, but yeah, you lose some of your stability, and unfortunately, you lose some of your speed too.
Similar to center mount drives, whenever you get like the autopilot, for example, but mostly on like the Mosa from Voyager, that was a big one that came up because it's such a high power drive up front. There's a lot of torque and it's right in that drive well. So that can cause some issues. But the big pro there is just that this is a pretty nimble kayak. Again, like Paul said, just tone down that speed when you're correcting or finishing a turn and you're going on straightaway. Just don't throw yourself out of the boat. And again, it's one of those situations where the boat's not going to flip, but your momentum is going to push you out of the boat, right? So be careful with that. I think there's a ton of track on here. I like that they have the rails, so you got the potential for rail attachments, as well as the top track that they have in there. Now, you do have all these little bits and bobbles in there. What you can do is you can pop off an end and you can run a T-bolt through that. So you can still use all your normal T-bolt stuff, take all those parts out if you want to.
You want it to look like that when you were gonna put one on, so you would have to unscrew this, pull this out, put your T-track in, decide whether or not to put this back in, and you want it to look like that. And then you can
use what you want.
That's right. You can use whatever you want. And then you can pop this out, pull the rail out. You have to pop that out too. And then you can do the same thing.
I like that they have the scupper plug here, so you can plug the drive well, which is great. And that way when you're motoring around, this prevents a lot of the water from coming up. I didn't really see any coming up at all. So yeah, that was pretty dry. What's cool about this one is that they actually have this little piece that goes around the outside, so it really cinches up nicely, but it's locked in there. Also, it's super flat, so you can still stand in that area. That's cool. Water drainage and everything was not an issue whatsoever. We did have the scuppers in here, but if you don't, the cool thing about skiffs with an open stern is that the water will just flow out the back. And we did notice, like, this motor, it's pretty powerful, like 3-horse equivalent. We were doing 6.5 miles an hour. I clocked it on that speedometer app, so it does have speed. Another great pro, 6.5 miles an hour. A lot of water was kicking around back here just because it's open. This is the design, this is how that works, but it all flowed out immediately, and that's why we had the scuppers removed in the back. Worked out great. Seat position was good here. We positioned it to the side. This is probably the best seat out of all of them. You do have the option to swivel it. You just push this to the side and then it locks into a few different positions. So it can go here, here, or fully to the side, maybe all the way back. I don't know, I never tried. Or all the way back. You can do that too. So it's once you figure out like how that actually works, you just push this lever to the side. It's really easy to do. Lockdown pretty good too. This has 4 locking points to the tracks. So seat was stable. We were in a good position. It all worked out great. Probably the biggest pro for this one over a lot of the other skiff, Skyak hybrids out there is that you have the option for the pedal drive. So you can use only a fin drive right now, but you pop that fin drive in there. You have a rudder, you have steering. There's your rudder control right there. The actual, I love that Duke has taught us the proper terminology for this, the biscuit. Basically the disc for rudder steering is right there. You have the option of removing this transom mount, cutting a little bit of weight because that's all metal. You take the battery out, take the motor off, leave this open. Now you have plenty of room and track here where you can mount and tether down your black pack or your crate of whatever you want to use. If you use the tiller, right, I have this tiller sticking out here. I have my transom mount motor. I have to position my seat kind of offset. I'm going to move it further forward, and that gives me room to steer. This was very comfortable to steer, by the way, too, because they have that swivel option. And I like that you can lock it into place because that just made it much easier. If I couldn't like lock it, that would be an issue. What do you think, Paul? What are the cons on this one?
There are definitely some cons. One con is that there's almost no hull access. So if you wanted to rig this kayak out, it's gonna be really difficult. There is no hull access here because it's not a drop-in bin. There is no hull access here because it's not a drop-in bin. So you either have to cut out your own access and make a drop-in, or just deal with it being open, or you have to drill a hole and really find a really creative way to get it wiring from the front to the back. This, I just don't think you're gonna be adding really any internal electronics here. Either the cabling is gonna have to run through the top of the deck, or you're gonna have to keep it all coiled up somewhere like on the inside of your drywall, which is totally fine. You can do it, but running cable front to back, it's probably not gonna happen.
Think similar to the Crescent Shoaly. There's actually a scupper in there and in there, but that is fully sealed up. So when he says there's no removable drop-in bin, he means you can't pull anything out of there and then reach into the kayak itself.
Yep, and actually now that we're talking about this bin, while I like this bin,
I can't get to it.
It's not even that I can't get to it. Like, it would be fine if I could still move the seat out of the way, but like, look at how even with this thing almost fully undone, I cannot put the front of the kayak seat, I can't put this front part anywhere.
The actual bolts to tie down the seat are not long enough that you can loosen it enough to move it back. You have to take them off and move it over this.
Like, I can't fit this bolt into this track. So I either have to be all the way up here, and this is when I'm doing the tiller steer, or when I'm pedaling, this is as far forward as I can be. Now, this was fine in both instances, but like, I'm never gonna be able to access this without moving the entire seat back, and it's kind of a pain because you got the 4 screws. So it's great when it's here, but when it's not here and you're using a tiller, that's kind of annoying, honestly. I think you got 2 options to fix this. One, you could just remove it, but really, you could sink this down lower, make it flush so that this isn't hitting it. 2, you could raise your seat and have this bar just not be here, which would also be great, so just change the seat design. Or maybe just make these latches in the back quick release so that if you wanted to access it when it was all the way up here, you could just pick up the back of the seat, rifle around, grab what you need, click it back down into a cradle back here. Then it's kind of the best of both worlds, but that is a tricky situation. Also, we talked about when you have the tiller steer, you really cannot have a crate. There's more room for a battery because you can move the seat all the way up, but you're not gonna really have a crate here.
No.
This is in the way, your battery has to be here. You can do it, it's just really not designed for it. And again, I think the biggest thing is, if there's one change that I can make to this kayak in total, it would be just take this mount, move it almost 2 feet back. The motor should be like right here. The further back you move this, you're gonna get more speed out of your motor. If you wanna go 8 or 9 miles an hour, take this, move it 2 feet back. You're actually gonna be a lot more stable. Shockingly enough, you'll be more stable having this move back, and then having your battery be back by your seat or somewhere up in the front would be ideal, because you're gonna be on flat in the water more often, fighting less water when you got the motor running. And yes, you may need to do a tiller extension if you want to reach it, or you may need to trim your seat back a bit, but there's so many benefits to not having this in the middle. I think you can get away with a lot. I think this would be a huge change for the positive. I think lastly, while there are other comparable models at the price point of $2,500, because you are getting a drive, that's a big win. If you went to $2,000 and you didn't get the drive, I think there's more value there. I just think of the 3 models that we looked at here, this one probably has the least amount of like per dollar value. There are some other options. Yes, they may be more expensive, but you do get some more features, a little better fit and finish, a little more refined design. And on top of that $2,500 now, if you want to have the tiller steer, you're adding like thousands of dollars to get a battery and a tiller steer, unless you already have a gas motor. So I think overall, I think this one probably has the least amount of value. There's certainly value here. It's just less than on the Voyager and a little bit less than on the Impulse. So overall though, I think this is very usable, very fun, cool design. If you're willing to keep it light, to keep it simple, you can have a ton of fun cruising around with a motor like this, or without. You've got a much more stable platform. You can hold a lot more stuff, fully load your crate, do the whole thing, never worry about getting wet, and just have yourself a lot of fun. So overall, yes, it works. It's got value, but less than these other 2 models. So we're gonna hit the Impulse 120 Pros. Some of the pros. One, I actually really liked the seat height. I think when you get to the high seat height, as long as you can stay there without falling, could be the tough part. But once you're up sitting high, I actually really liked where you sat in this kayak. I liked the trim was very nice. I thought you were able to sit pretty far back without sacrificing any speed at all. There was a lot of room up here, which I thought was great. Once you take a couple steps past, and if you can get your foot here and here, you had a nice stable platform to stand on, and I felt comfortable standing and fishing out of this. Was it the most stable of these 3? No, it is tied for second, I would probably say, on stability. So I think the Voyager and the Impulse probably have the equal amount of stability when you're standing.
Voyager's just so much deeper in the footwell that you sit lower in the water, adding to that stability. I felt better in the Voyager than I did in this by just that much.
But like pretty close.
Yeah, pretty close.
I like that you could access the front hatch very well. I like they have this little bar right here. Was a really nice addition of track, which I thought was very convenient.
Good storage midship was nice.
Love this. Like, this is one of my favorite features of a kayak, is when you have that center storage. It's just such a huge like utility. I use it for everything. I like that you could fit up to a 16-16, but definitely it's comfortable with a 13-16 back here. So you can fit a lot. You got 6 rods back here with the ability to take a ton of tackle, and I don't have any need to get back here. So like, we are good, no problem. I like the rudder situation here. When you have the Voyager back there, even with the rudder up, it's kind of a problem, because you may, when you're loading it at some point, just crush that rudder without thinking about it. So that can be kind of annoying. This is less of a problem, and if you don't have this motor bracket on here, it comes all the way up, which is pretty nice. Open, simple, pretty comfortable, effective fishing kayak, and it was pretty fast. With having a slower drive style, a little more torque style versus horsepower speed style drive, because you have the fins, it kept up with the Voyager, which is a 10-footer. I thought that was good. So overall, I think it's a great kayak. It's very simple, not a lot going on, but that means not a lot to break. I think most things went fairly well. It was pretty comfortable, pretty fast, held its own speed-wise, even though it's the fin drive. At $1,800, I actually think there's a lot of value here when you consider your other opportunity for a similar pedal kayak is going to be either a Vibe Makana at the same price, but you're getting a little more kayak, or you're going to compare this to the Vibe Shearwater, which is like $200 to $300 more expensive depending on what you end up paying for a Shearwater. So I think value-wise, it's sitting in a good spot. I think your biggest pro though with this kayak is going to be the pricing. So at the price point of $1,800, $1,750, whatever you want to call it, you are significantly less expensive than a Vibe Shearwater, which is like the next next, probably most size-wise and profile-wise comparable kayak, you're like $1,000 less with the drive included, which is nuts. You are gonna go up against the Vibacana, even though that's a 10-footer. I think it's pretty similar, has some similar features. This one does have the front hatch storage, the Vibacana does not. So there are some key differentiators. That being said, you get a little more kayak for a little less money. So I think that that is also a win on the value side, probably the biggest one. Now let's talk a couple of cons. There are some. How's your hand?
My hand is injured.
You injured me. You did this.
I can definitely say that I did the things you shouldn't do with this, but here are the big cons for me, and the biggest con is the seat. It's not even close. This design is not good. Right away, I would love to see Hoodoo just change the seat, and I think they can actually save money production-wise by not using this seat because it has more complexity to it with these adjusters. I'm with Paul. I like the mid to higher seat position just for being able to stand up, sit down, move around a little bit more. I felt more comfortable pedaling in the higher seat position than I did in the low seat position. And in the lowest seat position, you're basically on the floor, right? So I don't want that. After I fell and almost tipped out of the boat and lost my stuff, which would have sucked, I realized I didn't want to adjust this anymore, so I just stayed in the bottom seat position. That happened because I stood up, but what ultimately happened is I bumped this side with my heel, so only one side went down, the other side stayed up. So naturally my body wanted to just go this way, and it almost did. I just threw myself back in and it was fine, but that's not ideal. So again, huge con to me, this seat. Get it out of here, change it out. I would love to see that change up.
So what the con Jeff is talking about is, yes, when you're seated, this is fine. You just bump it up a bit, it just collapses.
That's just a tap. So if you go to stand up like I did, my leg just kind of like bumped the tube, popped it up, it fell down. So that is a huge safety hazard for me. It's something I would call out to anybody. You're gonna wanna change this seat immediately or stay in the lowest seat position possible. It does fit the same frame width as that seat there on the Apex. So Hoodoo already has that seat. It might be a little more expensive for them because it has the swivel, I don't know. But I'd love to see if they could do something about just changing this one out. That'd be cool. The adjustable seat, I think a lot of people I've heard complain about this seat too. So in general, it's kind of a known issue.
One of the other bummers is even whether this is in the high or the low, you can't fit anything under it. So the under seat storage area is kind of not usable.
There's a little space in between here, so that would be cool, but there's this little dry hatch there. So, I mean, if you put anything there, which you can, it's just gonna float around and bang around and stuff. So that's not ideal. I used this the whole time, which was great. Like this, it's cool. You can get a drop-in bin for this. It has a lip around it. So we could drop a bin in there. I think it was at the shop. We might've forgot it, but it exists. But this also has a scupper in it, so you can drain it out if any water does get in there, which is neat. I mean, the last thing about the seat is this little metal piece right here is pretty sharp. So when I bumped that, my reaction, my body's reflex was, oh no, grab this. So I went to grab it and I sliced my finger open on this little rough edge right there. Not ideal. Luckily it stopped bleeding pretty quick and I got back to having fun and catching fish. When it comes to rigging, one of the cons for this is there's not a lot of hull access. So you actually have this circle plate here at the back. So you can pop that off. Oh, it's a full screw in. Yeah, but you can access there. You can access this circle hatch that we saw underneath the seat.
Oh,
so you got that there.
Back, but nothing in the front.
But these two spots are not open. So the last third of the boat is where you have access. Up here you have none. That can be an issue, obviously, for anyone. If you want to run a graph, they've already got this here, which seems like a great place to put it. However, your cables, whenever you open this, are likely to be in the way. So you'd have to put it on a fairly long ram arm or something just to get it up and out of the way, which will work. It's not ideal, but you can do that. So there is track here.
There's also not a lot of room behind the base, so it's got to be a really small mount.
That's the main issue I have for this. But you can always put it here, which is fine. I would probably use like a cell block with this from Yak Attack. That'd be great. Big issue everybody at the shop saw with this one is just this tiny cup holder that's molded in. There's no drainage in this. It only fits cans. If you have a larger tumbler, it's not going to work. And then we've got these trays molded in on the side, which in initial concept is kind of a cool idea. Hey, bait graveyard, hey, put a couple things, but it's so shallow and it's on the edge of the boat, being that it's on the gunnel, I don't feel comfortable putting anything there. And this one actually has a drainage. So if I put weights, hooks, anything, water gets in here, it's actually leaving. It'll be gone. So that could be a problem. I would love for that to be flat. Let me put some track on there. I'll add my own cup holder. I don't really need this one. So that would be a cool design change for them. Overall, like Paul said, okay stability. I actually felt more stable in the Voyager itself, but there's obviously more room and options for accessories on this one. And Ketch is making some pretty cool products on all of these, because a big like overall con, if you're into motors on this and the Voyager, is that they do have, these are brass inserts underneath here, but obviously you need a plate that's going to accommodate that, so you can do a 4-bolt pattern if you want to run a motor. Ketch is working on that. This is actually a little R&D work right there, so is that. And it's pretty cool to see that they're putting something together. On this one, they have the inserts, but Ketch would work on a plate for something like this, so you have a stronger and more consistent 4-bolt pattern so that you can accommodate those motors, and they just fit right. Been working with Duke and the guys over at the Ketch shop, and we talked a lot about tolerances and how roto-molded kayaks, which these are, can have some issues with that. Another big thing, if you're into motors, you want your spot lock. Unfortunately, none of these are built to accommodate that. Again, this is something where maybe a company like Ketch can do some R&D work, as you see right here on the Impulse, for example, and they can create an opportunity to have that bow mount, and that would be really cool, and that's what the boys are working on. So overall, here's the good news. Hoodoo is bringing all of their manufacturing to the States, and they are taking over a lot of the design, overhauling, updates, and all of that for these kayaks and skiff. So we can expect an opportunity for improvement. We'll see if they capitalize on it, but I love that they're now being made in the US. So they took the initiative to bring it back here. That is really cool to see. And also, you know, we met with the owner. I mean, he seems pretty open to feedback on all the designs. That's something that we find extremely important whenever we get in contact with owners and operators at these companies. Sometimes they seem open to things, sometimes they don't. And this is one of those scenarios where it's like, look, I almost broke the shearwater and threw myself out of a boat. Let's talk about this seat. And it's pretty cool to see that they seem open to that. So hopefully in the future, that means these models just get better, and they're also now made here.
Overall, I think it's really cool that we are seeing somebody, though, we're trying to make quality, less expensive, high value kayaks that have a lot designed into them, don't need a lot to be added to them, and get people on the water, either in a recreational or a fishing kayak, with the least amount of money possible. We love seeing that. Yes, we get into a lot of more expensive models because we test everything, but when we test everything, we will test any model that we can get our hands on. And I understand there are some folks who are like, I'm never gonna add a motor, it's too expensive. Yep. I wanna do more than paddle. I wanna be able to pedal. I want to be able to like lift my kayak on top of my vehicle, go fish, 2 rods, 1 rod, 3 baits, whatever, get in, get out. That's what this is for you. It is a fast, less expensive way to get on the water. Kudos to Hoodoo for getting a bunch of these models not only here to us from another country, but onshoring this, making them here in America, giving jobs to people here who need them, and being open to making these high value models even more valuable and making them more modern over time as we, again, bring the production here, which is pretty sick. Good for them.
So there's our review on these 3 models from Hoodoo. Let us know what you guys think of these in the comments below, especially if you are an owner of any of these models. I'd love to hear your personal experience and feedback. I'd love to see if it's a little bit different than what we saw. Obviously, we only had a short amount of time out here, but hopefully this was helpful for you. And hopefully we can see Hoodoo make some improvements to these models, maybe some updates as they bring them to the States and all of that. I'm pretty excited for it. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. Smash that like, ring that notification bell, be subscribed, other cool things.
Then you can see the next video.
The next one will come up. All right, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you later. Bye.